Would it be wrong if I?
Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Mrs. DeGraw. We will go ahead and call our regular board meeting to order. And Mrs. Perkins, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the floor will be open for a motion to approve our agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The floor would be open for a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the previous two meetings.
I second that. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Williams, your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quite a lot. This is definitely the busiest month of the year. And as I've said in other meetings, I haven't experienced a May as a superintendent yet. And I think we're cramming like 4 months of activities in the last 3 weeks of school, but a lot of exciting things. First, at my last superintendent meeting, I was nominated to be the Region 6 Idaho School District Council representative. So I don't know if that's a congratulations or a condolences, but
I think it's a great honor.
so I will be required to attend some Zoom meetings, and then during our annual meetings over in Boise, I'll attend some different side meetings as well. So I'll be able to represent District 6 superintendents in that and be able to learn more about that opportunity. As we're going through, one of the weeks we had Teacher Appreciation Week. PTO did a great job. Just a shout out to Jules Kimbrough setting up that entire week with multiple food. I think most teachers gained 5 to 8 pounds during that week. It was an amazing thing with the different dinners. Our teachers, the feedback, really are appreciative of our community. They feel the love that our community has for them, and it was a great week. Highlighting our school board, and I do want to really thank this West Jefferson School Board for the dedication that you guys have of being trained. We went to the ISBA Spring Leadership Institute in Rigby. I believe we were the only one there that had all of our members. And so a lot of good things that we learned there. And one of the take homes that I had from that, we're doing a lot of the things that the training shows. And so those that are interested in our school board members doing what they should be, absolutely. And I appreciate the time that you guys volunteer to this position. And so that was great. Just to touch on the continuous improvement plan, I was attending the legislative roadshow today. Some of the things they talked about on that is the Idaho Comprehensive Literacy Plan in December was updated. And so I will include those elements in next year's continuous improvement plan as we talk about that this summer and approve it in September. So we'll can save that for future times. Technology department, the interactive TVs are almost completely all installed. And so they were cranking out. That's with the technology department and the maintenance department. Those two have been doing it hand in hand together. And then the fiber optic wiring project is moving forward well. This project will connect with some of the other things we talk about later in the discussion time, but really a busy time. And you only have a couple people on staff there with Mr. Weeks and Mr. Reyna, but they're doing a great job of keeping up with it.
But they get the ceilings lowered and their kids are in there and they're in school.
So we were able to pull that off. We when we met with the board right before spring break and we approved the different projects, that gave us the flexibility to hire people when it was open. And so during spring break, we actually were able to go out and contract with somebody that they had I don't want to use the word break 2 times in a row, but they had an opening to be able to jump in and do that. And so during spring break, they went in and put all in the junior high hall, also in the art room, all the drop down ceilings in preparation for those remodels. And so it was fortunate that Mr. Soderquist was able to get that done at that time, because a lot of construction projects right now, they're struggling to get people lined up, and a lot of jobs are getting pushed back. So super lucky and fortunate on that, but it just put things in place so things can go smoothly during the summer. Other things that Mr. Soderquist is working on is, like I said, the art room remodel, but also the lunchroom remodel. Mrs. Ward has had a lot of those different, like the washing machine and things that dishwasher that she was getting through the grants. They're able to go in and figure out how they'll be able to implement that and put it into the lunchroom. Food services focusing on a point of sale. This is different than the one that we purchased from the district. It's one that's going to be specific for the lunchroom, which will make things easier for her reporting. There was, some communication from the state and during all the COVID about a program called PEBT. That's where the schools would help allow parents that qualify to be able to have a debit card. It's kind of like a food stamp card. But because we were in session all year, our families didn't qualify, which was good because it was really designed for those kids that weren't at school all the time to be able to have that. But because we were in school all year long, they looked at our calendar and said, never mind. Tons of field trips going on, a lot of fun field trips. I was even able to go on one to Yellowstone. Probably more to mention, and I'm glad we're doing it. I know some might feel like, oh, there's just fun stuff going on at school, but if you remember last year at this time, I'm sorry, maybe we're just overreacting to making up for some lost time on the field trips, but the kids have had a lot of fun with that. Their graduation was yesterday, and have some pictures on that with Officer Mike Miller, who's been doing our DARE program for 29 years. I'll scroll through here. We have our essay winners, Alejandro Figueroa and Cannon Calder, and Lupita Paz from Clark County. And of course, as part of the DARE program, Thurl Bailey, from retired Utah Jazz player, was there. And I remember my son was over there watching that, said, wow, he's really tall. He's like, I thought Isaac was really tall. So no, Thurl Bailey's a little taller.
What is he, 7'4"?
I don't know. I was gonna look it up, but
Online it shows 6'11".
I was gonna say
6'11"?
I thought it was 6'10", 6'11". Approximately 115 sixth and seventh graders, and so because the seventh graders weren't able to finish the program last year, they were able to give them the crash course on it. They took a couple days and used that time. Some pictures from Hamer's program yesterday. I know that Mrs. Perkins, you were able to attend that, and Mr. Johnson, the principal, was able to be there. So the costumes, of course, were made by Miss Anderson, and fabulous job. I can remember as a child being part of the Hamer Elementary music concerts, and of course I wouldn't mess up because my grandma wouldn't let me do that. Secondary schools, we have a new boys basketball coach. He's actually meeting with the team tonight as well. Booster Club had an award night earlier this week, and thank you to the Booster Club members for putting that together. Very well organized. A couple highlights from that: Coach Dixon and Coach Torgerson, one for girls basketball and volleyball, were named District 6 Coaches of the Year. Volleyball team had an extra award where they were the 3A, 2A girls team of the year for the region.
Wow.
And Jordan Torgerson was chosen as softball player of the year.
Wow.
And so here's just some pictures from those recognitions. And so it was something that I'm hoping that will become a yearly tradition, that we were there, and it was well attended. Scholarship night as well. Students were awarded $421,000 in scholarships. Graduation will be the 26th at 7:00. Distinguished young women. Congratulations to Eliza Ander, and you can see the different runner-ups there as well. They had also a great turnout with scholarship donations for the community. Again, our community is wonderful. Appreciate all that they do it looks like $49,000 in scholarships for that. So
19 of it.
19.
was that 19? Oh,
That's 19.
Wow, I better. Yes, I came in close. You can see that I'm looking at. Thank you, 19,000. I was like 49,000 when I first saw that. I'm like, we better check that because that's go to college right now. Mr. West Jeff Pageant also, but they do that right after the Distinguished Young Women. And Branson Everson was the winner with Jarrett Harrelson as a runner-up. Always a fun one to attend. The Descendants musical with Mrs. Erickson and her crew is ready to go. The first two performances are already sold out. So folks, if you're listening in live, we want to make sure that you get your tickets for the 28th and 29th. There will be a matinee at 3 and a regular show at 7 o'clock. And so I'm excited for that as well. As Symphony is actually, that's where probably most of our people that are usually here at board meetings are at the Symphony tonight, but Mrs. Parker has that going on tonight at the high school auditorium. Track, we have quite a few. These are the ones at the district track meet that qualified for state. You can see that Zion Kimbrough was second place in 100 meters and followed by Payson. We have a couple of new school records. You can see our 4x10 relay for the boys is a new school record, as well as Payson Callaway with a school record, and Cameron Sauer has a school record. I'm going to also highlight Kyson Gabrish. You can see that he qualified in 3 or 4 different levels. At the sports assembly, Kyson Gabrish was awarded the Panther Commitment Award. He's the only senior athlete that has played 3 sports for 4 years.
Wow.
And so we're hoping that we can encourage, as future freshmen come in, that they'll be decided to want to play 3 sports throughout that time. But that was quite an honor for Kyson, as well as what he's been doing here on the track. The girls track also has others, Suhe Puente, Elizabeth Spencer, Kaylee Dowling, and Caroline Taylor were all able to get in on that. And so here are just a couple of the pictures of our track athletes as they were on the podium. And softball district champs. They were able to beat Firth in the championship game 3-2, very close game, but well played. They are currently in Boise right now. They had practice this afternoon, and were invited to a team dinner by a Booster Club member that lives in the Meridian, Dan and Karen Murdoch called and offered, and they wanted to feed the whole team. So they reached out and got his Traeger out and cooked for the girls and bus drivers and coaches. And so thank you to that Booster Club member for doing that. Good luck to the track and girls teams at their state. Quick little highlight. I don't have a picture right now, but those of you that have driven past the school or seen, we have these giant, enormous kickballs that Mr. H has been buying. They're called cage balls, and the junior high has been having tournaments out on the football field. And so it's really helped the junior high kids. Again, that it's a behavior reward. So those that are anxious and not wanting to quite follow the rules haven't been able to get to cage ball. So 7th and 8th graders have been doing well with the behavior because they want to get out to the cage ball games. But the kids are having a lot of fun with that. Coach Dixon is finishing up a basketball camp. This is a camp that they've traditionally done in the summer. Last year or 2 years ago when she did it, her numbers were around 18 kids that signed up, partly because summers are busy and people are gone. And I know these last couple of weeks are busy, but she's had 88 girls, preschool to 8th grade, come. And just a special thanks to all the coaches, our junior high coaches and high school staff, and a lot of the high school girls that played last year came as camp staffers. Our new C-team basketball coach, Kip Blanchard, was able to donate from his company the camp shirts that go along with that. And so, what a great turnout for the girls to be active in that. And, it's one of those things that sometimes with sports, we think, the teams are already established, but we've seen that even with former professional players who didn't make teams when they were younger. And I even saw that with the player that I played varsity ball with, who didn't make teams in junior high and came back to be one of the best players on the team later on. And so they had a lot of people come out, not just the ones that had made teams. And so good job to the girls basketball staff and thanks to all the volunteers and parents that were helping with that. FFA plant sale was a success. Mr. Bird's even come and asked, is there a way we can budget for a bigger greenhouse and look for ways to do that. The horticulture club landscaped some of the flower beds, but the plant sale's one that I know my wife and my mom especially will line up early. But my mom was slacking this year. She was second in line. And so she needs to step it up a little bit better to get that. But thank you to Mr. Bird and the horticulture class for that. BPA, I mentioned last time that we did have members that were competing in the national tournament. Bailey Cottle ranks 6th out of 50 in the country. So congratulations to Bailey Cottle. She was the highest one with I think that was the diagnostic coding and health, but 6th in the nation is that's amazing. And so thank you to Mr. Stembridge and the others that competed. The others that we have here, Linda Munoz, Peyton Scott, Hiram Spencer, they all finished right in the middle of the pack. So they represented themselves well at the national competition.
Super.
And just upcoming, our migrant summer school will be starting in the month of June. We do have some summer learning funding that just became available. Learned about some of the specifics of it today. And we're looking to offer some tutoring options for students. And so that's something that I will be sending out to parents and staff as soon as we can get a plan in place for that. Just one of those things that with the legislative session ending the way it is and still not knowing exactly what our budget is, we have to scramble really quickly. But so we might have some other summer learning opportunities on that. But hopefully I didn't. I probably missed something with everything on there. I know this was like a whirlwind. There was a ton going on. But it's an exciting time. We're finishing out the school year. We have a lot of good things coming on. I know that there's also some bumps and bruises a little bit when it comes to kids and wanting to be done for the summer. But overall, our staff's doing well and they do deserve a break here next Thursday. So, any questions from the school board?
Bailey Cottle is going to enroll at ISU this fall. So
Excellent
part on her part.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Williams. Mrs. DeGraw, do we have any public comment? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve financial and personnel?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I'll make that motion that we approve the accounts payable and financial report.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the calendar amendment.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. As we mentioned in earlier meetings, there was a discussion about the way that we're utilizing our mentoring periods or intervention periods for our secondary students. So currently this year that we've had a period of 30 minutes every single day that we've designated for intervention and mentoring homework help for the students. In the previous meeting, some of the cons that I was recognizing is we haven't been able to capitalize on that with the majority of the students. Probably 20 to 25% were really taking advantage of it. And then other than that, it was just hard to get kids completely motivated. But part of that is a system that you think about it from a secondary standpoint, where you have 5 periods a day of kids coming through your class. You might have 120 to 150 kids that you see. And then you have a quick break to how do you help those kids? And so we were looking and brainstorming different ways that might allow us to be able to still have the philosophy of having an intervention time for kids, but also not losing the time that we have, like taking advantage of the time when we have it. And so feedback from the teachers, as we looked at this, it came from one of our school improvement meetings. They expressed after that November blended learning day initially that the kids that came, I was able to get more done with them on that one day than I was in the whole time with those intervention time. And part of that is because the kids that really need the help sometimes are not overlooked by other kids that need help, but the kids that are able to advocate for themselves and are high achieving students, they're always there taking it away. And so you had a question or a comment?
That period seemed to be a time for those good students to get all of their work done, so
That's-
they can do sports at night or do other,
Yeah.
things, the traveling they have to do. It was a great time for them to get that extra homework done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're
I
absolutely
hate
right.
to see that go.
You know, and it's one of the things that we're looking at what's best for the overall picture. And you could make the argument one way or another. And so there's two proposals in here for that. I don't think you can come up with a plan because this other plan here, the kids that need the intervention maybe aren't getting it the way that they need it either. And so, good point, and so
Would they come, if they're not doing anything on that half hour they're given, will they come on a Friday when they don't really have to?
So some of the things that we've kind of adjusted with this on how we can present this. So blended learning, because we call it a lot of different things, but really what this is a blended learning day. That means that we're going to be offering instruction at home and at school on that. And so that's what blended learning is defined as, instruction both at school and at home. All students are to plan on attending in person unless you've been assigned an extended learning assignment. So attendance is required. And so I thought about this, if we open it up the other way to say, hey, nobody has to come unless you're invited. No, you have to come unless you're given the opportunity for the extended learning.
But how many times do they come for extended learning or for the blended learning?
How many times? We'll talk about that.
Okay.
This will go
But
through.
what I'm saying is, here you have every day, you've got a chance to do your homework and the things that need to be
Yeah.
done. This way you have 1 week or 1 day out of how many weeks? And so,
So I guess you're looking at the purpose behind it. Is it really a time, not that it's wrong for a kid to use that for homework, but the purpose I see that is the kids that are at risk, your kids that do their homework. Yeah, this is something that really helps them. But your kids who are at risk, that are falling behind, that need the extra intervention, they're the ones that would help more. This is going to be something that would probably help the kids more that struggle than it will be to help the kids that are already
I like
doing
giving those kids that are doing well a bonus like that, but where would you put that extra half hour?
back to the teachers. And so,
Classes are longer.
yeah, so if you look at this right here, so students' attendance will be recorded on the days and determined by the students completing their extended learning assignments at school. That's how we track it. That's how it still fits in with it. The pros of this blended proposal is it does increase class time from 60 minutes to 65. So you'd take 5 minutes from each class and you put it back into the teacher. And so it's one less transition and prep for the day for the secondary teachers, for the secondary students. And so when we moved to this, the high school was already doing an intervention period, but that was when they had 5 class periods. The junior high had 6 class periods. And to make sure that we were able to share staff and be on the same page, we put all of our secondary classes to 6, but then also included the intervention, which ultimately created 7 transitions for the kids. And so I can see the point that, yes, this could take it away from the kids to do homework, but it also can allow teachers to have more time in class devoted to doing work as well. So just because there's 65 minutes, now the teachers can give instruction and possibly have a little bit more time for the kids to do it in class. May happen if teachers are right on and follow, but there's different observations. I know we have Deputy Keller, you see this all the time with that. And Madam Sheriff, if it's okay, can you share
Absolutely.
a thought?
The 30 minutes, like Mr. Williams was saying, that 30 minutes, the ones that do well in school anyways will generally go and they'll do stuff in that class. And they'll work on stuff. But the ones who are struggling that struggle all the time, by the time they get to that hour and get into those classes, they're done for the day. They don't want to be there. They don't want to do anything. Unless there's something that's coming up that they have to do, they won't go do anything. They'll just sit.
What time does that class?
It's in the afternoon.
It's just before last hour.
Yeah, it's in the afternoon, and we thought about having it in the morning. But if it's in the morning, what do you do for your homework in the afternoon?
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing that it's all. Deputy Keller, can you come tap the monitor here? Sorry, you're gonna be on YouTube Live here in just a second. But that's the one thing that when you look at like taking an opportunity to really capitalize on the time that kids are at school and which ones are using it. Our teachers are asked all day long to motivate and encourage kids to stay on task. And if you ask any parent of your high school kids, you know, if you have the secret of how you keep your kid motivated and on task all day long, it's just one more time that we're trying. We don't have the structure of a regular classroom setting. And the point is really well taken that if you have the students who are already doing well, they were doing well before they had the mentoring. This was just an added bonus for them. There's gonna be a stress one way or another, and so
I like to help our good students.
The blended days I've seen, because we've done them, because even when we're on those days, I'm still out here. The kids that are needing the help because they have to come, they're the ones that are in the classroom. Everybody else, if they're doing well and they don't need to be there and they've been gone, those kids now have the time, the teacher can be there and say, okay, this is what we're working on. It's more one-on-one with the kids who really need help on those blended, and they have the 60 minutes to work on it, or longer if they don't have anything in another class.
It just appears to me that if you have one blended learning in 2 weeks, maybe, a lot of classroom work has gone under the bridge by the time you get there.
yes and no. Some of it, as we're looking at right now, the things that kids are missing are piling up by the end of the trimester. And so that's why this proposal here is we want to be able to get to the end of the trimester, finish it, give a grade, and move on. Because part of the unintended, part of the unintended result is that some of the kids are always pushing it off until tomorrow. I'm gonna just, like, I've got mentoring tomorrow, and then they're in class. I'll just do it during mentoring class. And so you have the kids in class, teacher says, hey, you have time to do this. Oh, we'll do it during mentoring class. And so then it's just one more thing. And then they're not in that class during mentoring, and it just creates one more thing that they're not doing. So as I looked at the time comparison for the models, and this is different just a little bit, it's updated from our April discussion, because with this new proposed calendar, the students will gain one more instructional day. So I looked at this and I actually traded out one teacher professional development day for a blended day, which actually gives one more day of instruction back to the teachers. So instead of 159 contact days, it will now be 160 contact days during the year. The current one on the left, for 30 minutes a day, we would have 77.5 hours for mentoring intervention, and 4 times per trimester would be 60 hours per trimester. But you're thinking, okay, is that going to be enough? I actually think it's going to be great, because these blended early out days, the early out days on the calendar and the blended days all end at 2 o'clock. And so it's consistent. Anytime you have a different day than a regular day, they're all going to be 2 o'clock compared to the one. The reason why I'm proposing to go back to 2 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock on the other calendar is I failed to recognize that a lot of our students take release time, and that time doesn't count towards seat time for the state. And so I had to extend it enough that one class period for that release time still gives us over 4 hours of instruction on an early out day or a blended day. And so that's why it needed to go to 2 o'clock. Hamer was initially at 12:15, we'll move it to 12:30. They still have plenty of time built into that calendar because of the grade level requirements for it. So the daily schedule, the school day would start and end at the exact same time. With this proposed schedule, with moving mentoring to 4 times per trimester instead of every day, the secondary lunch would be 15 minutes later. 12:45 sounds late, where it's currently 12:30 right now, but it does give 37 minutes compared to 34 minutes for lunch right now. So that's one thing that it will extend the secondary lunch. This is a comparison of the two schedules. Right now on the left, this is what our schedule looks like. We have 390 minutes per day with a 30-minute intervention, but giving the 30 minutes back, we still have the transition times and the lunch times to be able to get that 389 minutes. Still plenty of time where we have built in for our secondary. The two grade levels that have the hardest time of meeting the state minimum requirements of seat time are kindergarten and seniors. So, but what we have built in 6 days for weather and things like that. So there's plenty of time for that. So the proposal that we have is that we amend the current calendar for blended learning days of instruction. This will be a trade 1 PD day for student day of instruction, and the early out and blended days end at 2 o'clock. That's with this calendar that was proposed. This calendar here is our proposed calendar. This proposed calendar does not have blended days on it, but the only change with this one is that it has early out times at 2 o'clock. This calendar would have mentoring every single hour, and it has 159 days of student contact time. This calendar is the one that has the blended opportunities on it.
What color are they?
They're the gray ones.
Gray.
So you'd have the first month and a half without the blended days of instruction, and then your last 4 Fridays that were in school will be a blended day. Students are all invited to come unless they're given the opportunity to do an extended learning opportunity. They could do the extended learning at school if they wanted to. They don't have to do it at home. So that's the one thing if parents are going, well, I want to send my kid to school, send them. We want kids to be planning on coming unless they're told they don't have to be there.
Is this just for your junior high to high school? This is elementary?
This would be elementary through. And the reason why I feel like the proposal would be the same is a couple of years ago, we had days where you'd have an elementary out. Sometimes you'd have kindergarten out. Some days you'd have junior high come, but not 5th grade. And I'm trying to keep it just as consistent as possible. If we're doing it for one grade level, we're going to do it all the way through. January, this is where on the other calendar we had an additional professional development day. I felt like we wouldn't need that professional development day. We could give back the 21st where we already have parent-teacher conference as a day in school. So other questions? I know Mrs. Perkins, you asked some questions, and there are trade-offs with this proposal. I do want to say that as I've talked with the teachers, I haven't heard one of them come and say, our high kids need this for homework. I haven't heard that once. I've had overwhelmingly, this would make it easier to keep kids motivated because one less transition during the day. Teachers feel like they'll be able to really reach those kids that need it more on this. If we have kids who are choosing to be absent on those days, and then they miss out on credit and don't graduate, we have a perfect example of, say, parents, we've reached out to you. We have these options and opportunities in place. Like, we need to step up and
So what
do
does
things like that.
So what does a blended day look like then? Do they go to the class
Yes.
that they normally would? But they're not as long as they are on
They
the
would be
other days.
they would be 50 minutes in
50
length.
minutes, and they,
Yeah, so they would go in, and so typically, if you have a class and a teacher identifies 5 kids, they would tell the other, let's say there's 20 kids in a class, they'd tell the other 15, you don't need to come today. You can do the extended learning activities from this binder or our LMS or however we decide to do that.
so
And-
they may not come that day. What does that
Yeah.
do for our attendance?
Because they complete the attendance at home, it's counted as if they're doing the work.
So the teacher's giving them an alternate assignment that they could complete at home and
Yes.
still be counted for the attendance, just not
Correct.
physically in person.
Yes, they do not have to be at school to be
But
counted
that's
for
the
attendance.
teacher's discretion. So you've
Yes.
got some kids just say absolutely have to be here.
Mhm.
And if you're not, you don't get counted for attendance.
Well, if you have students who don't come to school at all and don't complete the blended extension activities that the teachers assign them, they're counted absent as well. So if you're home doing that, there's accountability for the people that are at home
And
and at school. And so there's like, and that's the thing is we will, if you're not passing those off, that will go towards credit. And the kids need to realize it's not just a day off. They still have to do something. Now, the extended learning activities don't have to be just sitting home and like, they can be thinking outside the box, educational. And I'll let each teacher come up with the different ways and we can have,
so
so I don't,
It seems like it'd be a little trickier, maybe for the elementary age group. I wouldn't want to see a teacher just give packets to the whole class and say, hey, this is what everybody's got to do at home on Friday. Whereas the rest of the siblings in that family come in, that's where it could be a little confusing.
So if if a teacher says, and they do put a packet together, because I can see packets would probably be more workable with the younger kids.
Mhm.
Technology could be used really for the secondary kids.
Yeah.
But if a teacher sends a packet and they send them home, and as a parent, you want your kid at school, you send them to school. They can come with the learning packet to school and work on it at school with them.
So as a parent, you'd have to keep track of what Fridays they'll be home at 2 or released from school at 2, because then there are other Fridays that they would be released an hour later.
Yes, but what we're hoping is to simplify it is the last 4 Fridays that we're in school before the trimester. And I'm hoping that they would be able to pull up like, we're gonna put together some more magnets to hand out that people can check and see, okay, blended learning days are this day. And that could be a concern where somebody might get confused on it.
Well, the thing is, it's that they're not always right in a row, because you have
No.
some Fridays where it's a teacher professional day and they're out of school completely on that Friday.
Yeah.
So I can see though why you'd want to switch to something like this, because I also don't think that the intervention time has been utilized to its greatest capacity.
Yeah.
I think there have probably been students who've taken advantage of the time as just free time to socialize or whatever, because I don't know what to do. And maybe having the intervention established on those other days gives them a clear understanding of what they need to be doing to stay on task with the classes.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to accomplish with them.
I just heard a comment from my own student that when I'm in that mentoring class and I need help from my teacher, there's a line a mile long, and I can't ever get.
how will that be different on the blended learning day? If they have a 50-minute class, it'll be the same kids standing in line.
So there's flexibility on that. If I'm invited in to come and receive extra help on the blended learning day, and I only have, and let's say that there's one class that I'm really struggling in, I can go to that class, and well, let's say that class doesn't happen until 4th period. I check into my 1st period class, I tell my teacher, I'm here for this teacher's class. Is it okay if I go there in that teacher's class right now? And I could go and I could camp out all day long with that teacher if I needed to.
Well, she's gonna be busy with other classes.
But it's a blended learning day. They're not teaching new instruction on that day. They're taking the kids and intervening with them. So there shouldn't be a brand new lesson that they're like, oh, I'm gonna be teaching this and this
Oh,
and
they're
that.
just there to learn what they missed.
Yes,
Each
but-
teacher doesn't strictly teach one topic all day long, correct?
correct.
So they teach various ones. So
Mhm.
if I'm struggling in algebra, I would need to wait until that teacher is
Yeah.
teaching algebra.
Not necessarily, because that teacher is now an interventionist.
She's gonna have her algebra kids there in that 4th hour,
But you,
wanting to know.
But only what,
but
5?
but only a handful of them, if that. It's there's going to be,
Algebra.
yeah, there'll be flexibility. They'll have more access to teachers this way than the half an hour.
Mhm.
And there might be the occasional time where you have an overload of kids in there, but we're also going to have our paraprofessional staff here that day.
To help with the
Yes,
overload.
they'll be able to go on that. I think we're just utilizing our resources better by trying this.
And the teachers want this.
I haven't heard one teacher say no to this.
They've been told about this.
I've been talking about this for 2 or 3 months
Have you-
with them.
Mm.
Like I would be shocked if a teacher came to me and said, oh, why did you change it? Because I haven't heard one teacher say it. Just to the contrary, they really want this.
It always puzzles me when I think that we've done something good and we're excited about it and we've set it up and we do it. It turns out it's not as good as we thought it was.
You know,
It's trial and error.
Well,
they call that action research.
yeah.
And honestly, that's what we're supposed to do as a district. Like be willing to try things.
I thought everybody was doing well with this.
The philosophy and idea behind it is spot on. It follows, like, if you remember from the PLC conference that we went to,
Mhm.
those were the types of things they wanted embedded in schools,
I know
were intervention times.
that's why I liked it so well. They just made it work for me. I mean, it looked like it was really gonna work.
The one thing I think with our district for the secondary, because I think the intervention time, we already have this embedded in the elementary level with our walk to read, and we're looking at ways to include that to math next year. But it works because they keep smaller groups of students amongst themselves. The secondary, where we're at a disadvantage being a small school, is we don't have a full-fledged 4 to 5 teachers on a math department or 4 to 5 teachers on a history department and so forth. Where some of these other schools, the bigger schools, when they would do that, they would have times where it's just like mentoring for that department. But now it's not just mentoring for that department, it's everybody. And we're asking our teachers already to teach multiple preps and subjects. Now they're also trying to be the interventionist every single day. I think our teachers will be better prepared to provide better intervention when it's on specific days like this.
I see that as a wasted day for K5, K4.
In what
I
way?
think they should just go and do school, just like they always do. Just have K4 just go and do their regular routine.
We could. What are your thoughts from the others? I just feel like if we're holding one group to have everybody there, it's easier to have the same rules all the way across. But I'm curious on other board members.
I feel that way. I like the consistency of my kids being on the same schedule. And I don't want to have the fight of, well, I have to go and they don't. I can hear that now. I see what you're saying now.
Here's one thing that we can keep in mind, where in those K through 4 levels, it's good that our students are there, but if we were in a bigger school district where we didn't rely on the same transportation department and same food service,
They can go home when the others do. They could just
we
go and
could,
do their
but
regular.
most school districts have their elementary schools go till 2:30, 2 o'clock, and then they're done. Because the amount of hours required for the state are lower for those grade
I know,
levels.
But just let them go home on Friday the same time the other kids are going home on the buses, but have them just come and do their regular day,
So
Just have it be an early out every
an early
Friday,
out day,
basically.
yeah.
But even K through 4, you've got to have students that struggle that could use a little extra.
that's what
Time with their
that's what I
teacher.
think is with that. And if a parent wants your kid there, they send them. Like we have a pushback in right now of parents not having enough choice on what goes on. Parents have a lot of choice on this one.
Well, and I think some
They could-
parents have said that the current way that the intervention hour, or what the hour is that it's waste of time for their student. Because they're like, well, why don't, we could start, if you took this much time out of the day, then why aren't they out of school that much earlier? Because it's just wasted time anyways, if they're already caught up in class, and they're already on task and already getting everything done. And then you're asking them to sit for half an hour and figure something out to do when they've already done it, then it's not utilizing their time.
So Nedra, I guess let me ask the question then is if we start this, is it better to do everybody first at the beginning? And then have parents come and say, I really want to send my kid to school K through 4, but they still can. I think we're gonna have more pushback of people saying, well, why are you making me take the kids all day long? But I also think there's going to be teachers K through 4. If they want their kids there all day long, you know what they do? They say, I want your kids here all the time on these days. But we could have some teachers K through 4 saying, I want to use these days for my most needy kids. And so will those teachers be saying, why is it that I have to work so many extra hours that aren't required by the state when these teachers get to intervene with their kids? How come I don't get that opportunity? And so that's where I'm trying, I would like to start it off where everybody's doing it at the same time. And if it's not working, it would be easy for me to come back and for us to say, this didn't work. It was a disaster for K through 4. We need K through 4 to come every single time on that.
I like that, where that option can be open.
It's always open, everything, action research.
If it doesn't work, we can change it if we need to.
But as I've talked with teachers, even elementary teachers haven't come to me and said, oh, this is a bad idea. I've had some say, that won't work for us because they're gonna send all the kids anyway. Well, if they're sending all the kids anyway, teach it like a regular day. That's really what it comes down to.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments? Well, if someone would like to make a motion then.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we give this calendar amendment, blended days, a try, and hopefully it works.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Athletic fee increase.
At the public hearing on April 15th, we discussed the proposals for pay to play to be $100 per sport for high school, $50 for junior high. Cross country would be $75.40 due to no officials or equipment budget, and increase the season passes for the following: family pass 200, individual pass 75, child pass 50. Child pass would be for K through 6.
Can you remind me what was decided on the activity card?
Activity cards are available for students 7 through 12.
Mhm. And how much are those again?
$40.
$40, okay.
And since that's not an increase, that's
Right.
not discussed on here, but it was,
That's still required.
it's a
for
clarified.
Athletes to purchase.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I make a motion, we accept the athletic fee increase for the coming school year.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Preschool.
So as per the public hearing on April 15th, we have proposed that we increase the tuition from $40 to $45. Again, this is a 4-day per week program. One thing that it was discussed and that we are trying to educate everybody about the purpose of this preschool. The preschool we have is designed for students who are on individualized education programs or receiving special services. Students who are not on an IEP or receiving special education services are invited to come as peer models to help the students with disabilities have a peer to watch and grow from. That is why it's a tuition. It's optional. It's not required by the state, and it is a very good deal on what we offer. We did have a situation though where we've had to put a cap on the number of students that are peer models, because it's not if we have too many peer models and we have 20 kids in a class, we lose the purpose of the program.
So is it first come, first served?
And so we have capped it. We are taking names to put on an attendance, or excuse me, on a waiting list for that. There's also been some confusion that the preschool is designed really for students who are pre-kindergarten. That means that they should be in school during that time where they're going to kindergarten. There's been some exceptions on other years where the number of preschool kids has been really low. Like this year when we first started, we only had 7 or 8 kids in each preschool class. And so when that happens, the school district can allow some flexibility. But this next year where we have, we've had a lot of people come in, we've been able to cap it. One of the discussions was to have preschool be 2 days a week, which is consistent with a lot of other districts, where the kids would only come 2 days a week for 2 hours. We're coming for 3 hours for 4 days a week, which is a great service for those kids. But if we did a 2-day-a-week rotation, students that are on IEPs and receiving special education services, they would come all 4 days. We would just let our typical peers come Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. That still might be an option that happens later in the year. If our waiting list grows and we have more demand wanting kids to come to preschool, then possibly we could look at that. Mr. Johnson is putting together a letter to send out. He was waiting for the board on the decision here on what to put for the dollar amount. Even if we move to a 2-day per week, we're gonna have some people say, well, what about the $45? I know of preschools in Rexburg that do it 2 times a week and they're charging $90 a month. So even if we move to 2 days a week or 4 days, I think we keep it here. There's part of me that thinks the $45 a month is way too low still.
Yeah, that's the question I had. Are you comfortable with that $45 amount?
I am for this year.
Well, don't we have to make increases incrementally or?
You can make it by a certain percentage without board approval.
Okay.
But if it's over, don't quote me, it's 3 or 5%. And so the $5 would do that. But when we first started talking about preschool, we had people going, wait a minute, that's way too much. But again, it's optional. And if you're on an IEP or receiving special education services, you don't pay. It's free. So there could be some changes. I wanted to share that with the board in case that does come up later on, that that we really don't, we don't need board approval to decide whether or not we go 2 days a week or 4 days a week with preschool, because it's based on the program for special education. But we do need board approval on the dollar amount. But my intention is if it does go to 2 day versus 4 day, the $45 remains,
Mhm.
or the 40, depending on what the board approves.
But you anticipate that you could change it partway through the year
Yeah,
to this
that's the
2 day?
question I had.
If we have enough people coming and wanting to be in,
Mhm.
the letter will go out explaining that. We're gonna start with 4 days a week.
Mhm.
And we went back and forth as I counseled with Mr. Johnson. Is it better to start with 2 days or go to 4 days? One of the advantages is right now, we don't have a long waiting. I don't know if we have anybody on the waiting list. And so if we start the year, it gives us a chance to also see who really shows up. Because there's a chance that some of the kids that are on the list move. That happens regularly. And if we went to the 2 day already,
It might not even be.
it might not even be necessary. Because if we don't have the numbers, I'd prefer to have them here for 4 days.
Mhm.
Because it's better for all the kids.
Yes.
We have the resource, we want to maximize it the best we can.
What's it like this year? Do you have enough would you have had enough for 2 per week?
No, this week our numbers were low until we had a huge increase about middle of February.
Oh.
And we had about 8 students move in at
Oh,
that
my word.
level.
True.
But it's still, our classes were at 8. And so by the time you have AM, PM, it put it up to 12.
And what's your limit?
And so I believe we kept it at 17
Mm.
right now, which we feel like we can
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
I'm
where,
surprised there's not more than that.
and so 17 per class.
Yeah.
So we're close to 34
Wow.
that came in, but we
Okay.
needed to put a cap
Mhm.
before we move it, but that way they can get on the waiting list, and that would help us. But if they get on the waiting list and somebody else moves away, they fall right into it.
So this proposal, the dollar amount could be raised if necessary during the school year, or is
No.
that dollar amount gonna be locked in?
That'll be locked in until next year if we
Until
decide
next
to
year,
move it.
and then next year we might have to increase it, possibly.
Possibly, there's always the option with that. Part of it is we want to make sure that our programs, this is not going to sustain it, even if it was double that. It
Mhm.
doesn't cover everything.
Yeah, see, and that's what I kind of worry about.
But we already know that, and it hasn't been. I don't want to, this will help move in that direction,
Mhm.
and we'll see. But if we move to 2 days, we keep the same amount. It doesn't change.
Okay. Mhm.
Any other questions or comments? The floor would be open for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we increase the tuition for the preschool program to $45.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. K-6 math curriculum renewal.
All right, this is one that was brought to my attention a little bit later than I was anticipating and wanting it to. Our K-6 math curriculum is Pearson Envisions. This is a program that I used in my previous elementary, in my previous district, and we've used it for the past 5 years. And so there's pros and cons with any curriculum, and the same could be said about Envisions. There's some strengths and there's some weaknesses with this current one. Right now, though, my recommendation is that we renew the program to continue. The reasons behind that, we have the teachers and new principal at our elementary are familiar with this curriculum. 2 of the new teachers that we've hired to come in are teaching from the same curriculum as they come in. We've already asked our teachers to and will become acquainted with a new learning management system. The OTIS system is going to be new for them. The elementary teachers have the 95% core reading. There's a new administrator, new teachers. And I feel it's not the right time to add one more additional piece if it's a new curriculum. And so we're looking at a 3-year renewal instead of a 5-year. And so that will give us time to continue with what we're doing. But at the same time, as we look at the next renewal, look at, are there other options or things in place? One thing that I've observed with this is, with the program, like I said, not any program is perfect. There's some weaknesses with this one. But there are also some strengths that can be done. The teachers, a couple of new teachers that we've hired from the different district have been utilizing some of the intervention pieces, and they'll be able to bring that in and strengthen up our district. Also, Mr. Johnson taught this curriculum, which will allow him as observer and also the educational leader of the elementary to be able to go and guide. I think he would be at a disadvantage, the teachers would be at a disadvantage if we went away and tried to go to a new program right now. There's, the same can be said with the 5th and 6th grade, where we're having Mrs. Torrio come in to teach the 5th and 6th grade math next year. She's taught Envisions and will be able to be more comfortable with that. I know our high school curriculum could extend down to 6th grade. That's something that we can explore as a district, those 6th grade students who are maybe ready to move on to the other curriculum. We might be able to put schedules in place where they go to a class with 7th graders to be able to have that opportunity. So I'm open to different things. I know there's pros and cons with this proposal, but at this time, looking at what's best for the district to keep things current, it's not best practices to curriculum hop and jump and think that the curriculum is going to be the thing that changes it. It's our instruction. And if we've struggled a little bit with this here, this program, my recommendation is for us to reevaluate, are we following the right approach to teaching it? And that's, I don't know. I don't have enough. That's not me saying that our teachers are currently teaching it incorrectly. That would be the first step that I would want to look at and say, is it really the curriculum or is it how we're teaching it? And that's the thing that we can change. I do know that our school district has jumped math curriculums in the past. And if we had, again, I apologize for not catching that this was the 5th year of the renewal, but this should have been a conversation we had at the beginning of the year before now. So at this point, this is where I feel it's the best recommendation moving forward. The cost would be for $36,000. We will have money available to do that. That's not going to be an issue in the budget for this proposal.
And so, just to clarify, are we gonna have some in-service on this, or are we just gonna try to?
No, they will have the in-services. So one thing that now that we have administrators over smaller chunks of teachers, it's going to allow them to be able to provide intervention for them. I know Mr. Johnson has already talked to me about, there's an intervention system that's already connected to this curriculum that at this point, he hasn't seen it utilized. And that's one thing that the teachers that are coming in that we were able to hire in have utilized that. And so, yes, we'll be able to make sure that professional development is, and again, math is a focus. We know that we've been, as we've come and shared, we've been making progress even with the pandemic in reading. We know that math, and it's not just our district. And I was at my superintendent meeting. Districts are feeling pretty good that they're holding steady with literacy, but they're all really concerned about math. It's not just West Jefferson. It's every district. I haven't heard one district be like, yeah, we're knocking it out in math. And with that, that's also indicative of it's not a curriculum that equals success. And so that's where we need to focus in on some other things. But thank you for that question.
Any other comments or questions? The floor will be open for a motion.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we renew the elementary school math curriculum for 3 years.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Go ahead.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Rezoning.
All right, this is a new one that that, so section 313 of Idaho Code says that following the report of the decennial, the 10-year census, the Board of Trustees of each Idaho school district is required to submit to the state board for approval or disapproval a proposal to change its trustee zones to equalize the population in each zone. So here's the question that I have. So the ISBA, this is why I'm bringing it up now, they do have the ISBA has a discount as a service if we enter into it before June 1st that allows them to come in and take care of this whole process for us. And I believe it's $4,300 right around there if we go into the agreement right now. And that's a lot of money, but at the same time, it could be really time consuming. I know some of our board members have been through this before and we can talk about that. But if the census data doesn't show a large change in population for each zone, does that, the district may keep the same zones. And if you look at the next part, I pulled up 3313 on section 4. And it says a proposal to, this is for districts, a proposal to redefine and change trustee zones of any district may be initiated by its board of trustees. That's telling me that we don't have to do it. Where when I first look at this here, it just says you have to submit this to the State Board of Education for approval or disapproval. But if we keep the same zones and go, I just don't know. I don't see a lot of housing popping up in our area.
I have a question.
Like,
in your opinion, do you think the zones have changed that much to change them?
Have we seen this census?
No, that's the tricky part about this is, and maybe this is a sales pitch for ISBA, that if we wait until after the census data is shown, then it goes up by $600. So, but the census is also delayed because of COVID. So we might not see the census until November. Probably won't see the census until the next
It's not
presidential
fair to
election.
have to make a decision when we don't know all the information.
See, and that's why I wanted to look at the Idaho code, because if it's not required to submit it every 10 years, it says we may.
So can we consult with legal and see if there's a penalty for not submitting it?
I can definitely send that in to our legal counsel. I don't see.
We haven't had the housing growth like
No.
other areas of the county have.
This mostly pertains to your big growth areas,
Yeah.
not really to our little rural
And when I was-
district that's not growing fast.
And when I was at my superintendent meeting, the superintendents that said, hey, this is, you got to jump in on this, were all in big districts, or they were smaller districts that have tons of new housing developments. And so that's why I wanted to look into the code a little bit more. So I don't know who was on the board when we rezoned before. Does anybody remember that process? Was it before everybody here?
It seemed like it happened right before, well, it must have been, but I thought it happened right before.
Yeah, but I don't
became
think
a
there
board
was
member.
much for changes.
We looked at it.
I
at
think
one
we
of the
looked at
board
it and the
meetings.
changes really didn't affect us.
I know Mr. Smith helped with
they
it and he
did
said it was
redo it.
quite time consuming,
Yeah.
but I don't know the process.
Because they showed us our new districts one time in board meeting, and that's been 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
and I don't think they've changed.
I think it did.
It did?
I thought that,
I believe when Mr. Smith did it, they did make a slight change.
Just a slight change.
But if it's a slight change, you have to go through
You still gotta
all-
report it, right?
and that's the only thing you have to report. It doesn't say here you have to report where you're at,
Mhm.
because what we would do is we would send the same map in, our current one.
Mhm.
And so let me pull up, I want my face to be seen as I'm looking at that. I'm like sneaking in. I need a close up of my
there.
nose. So I pulled up, what was that? 33, 313.
oh, yeah, it's,
I'm just gonna pull that up for us to.
it's right over here.
Or did I, did I have it in there?
Mhm.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, I should have trusted myself on that. It's right there. Okay, I'm gonna go back to share.
I remember I read it at home.
But especially on number 4, it doesn't say anything in here that after the census, you have to make a change. But if we look at number 4, there's 2 different ways for a proposal. So a proposal to redefine and change trustee zones of any district may be initiated by its board of trustees. And so it may be, but if we do it, we shall be initiated by its board of trustees at the first meeting following the report of the decennial census. So the decennial census hasn't come out, and we may do it, but we must do it at the next meeting after that. And it's, so if we do it, it's submitted to the State Board of Education. But if we don't do it, and we have patrons out there that want to change the boundary zones, they can follow this as well. They could petition a signed copy of not less than 50 school electors residing in the district, present it to the Board of Trustees, and within 120 days following the decennial census or the receipt of the petition to redefine and change the trustee zones of a district, the trustees shall prepare a zone for a change, which shall equalize the population in each zone of the district. So if we already feel like, it's hard for us to know, but if the zones are equalized, why would we need to change anything? And that's where I put pause on with this proposal going, okay, I need to bring it up because we have a timeline with ISBA, but I also, this is something that the board needs to decide on. And I guess what, at the very least, we can hold off and we can wait till the census
Wait
comes
until
out
the census comes out.
And pay the extra 600.
and pay the extra 600.
If we
But
have to.
But if it comes out, are we gonna bet $600 that we didn't grow? I'd take that bet every single time
Yeah.
because, you know, we don't have, now if we had a housing development
Yeah.
and we had kids, you know, all over the place, I think we would be having a different conversation right now. We see that with the Jefferson district, we see that with the Ryrie district within Jefferson County. They have multiple housing places.
What if you just have a population, a little bit of an explosion in the same houses you've always had, in the same area you've always had?
It could change
It could make your area smaller to compensate.
or bigger. And I guess that's what we'd have to look at is, and once it comes out, decide and say, it's not an equal representation. But to me, that sounds like, what does that mean? Like that's, and also how accurate, I hope this doesn't go all the way to the feds, but how accurate can the census data be all the time? When it's during we didn't have anybody going and knocking doors.
Yeah, I'll bet the numbers are not going to be accurate.
Have you guys heard of anything prior to this that anybody feels like there's a disrepresentation in areas?
No.
I just wonder, will they care? Will they say, you may not think the census is accurate, but we do, so do it anyway?
They could with a petition.
And-
Maybe we need to rewrite it then and not say may.
Right,
Yeah, because it's May.
and will they say, whether it comes back and it shows growth or not, you still need to do.
I don't see that
Gotta
anywhere.
rewrite it then.
I don't see that anywhere in here.
I mean, it doesn't make sense,
No.
but
Now, at the ISBA meetings they had last month, we talked about this a little bit. And what Karen was saying was that each school district has to report to each county seat.
And so if we don't change our plan, we submit our current
We
one.
just submit our current one, but we have to submit to the county seat.
Because here's the thing that they say, if we make any changes, they have to be verified by all the different, and that's the thing, that's what the service that ISBA is offering. If you make the changes, they're the ones that will go in and identify everything, but if we're not gonna change anything, then we resubmit what we already have.
That's,
And I think I would, talking this out right now, I think I'd bet $600 to save
Mhm.
4,500
Yes, I agree with that.
right now, so I don't, or we can see if Willie, if you wanted to dive in on this one.
No, I don't see a lot of growth in this area. Do you?
No, I guess if somebody
See, I,
Mrs. Chair, if somebody complains, we can say, well, open
But-
up some housing and then we
But
can.
this is-
Then we'll do it.
Then we'll rezone.
this is gonna pertain more to your growing areas like Idle Falls, Rexburg. It's mostly for them. We're not really in this where we're expanding to change.
Well, I know we do need to meet later on as negotiations finish up with the teachers and probably have a special meeting. I can make a couple other phone calls on this one,
Mhm.
just to make sure
Just to
that,
verify stuff.
yeah,
So do you need a motion to table it?
let's table it.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, let's table it and see where we stand with the census.
Only,
data.
only if you vote for that. You have to have a motion first and have
Yeah.
discussion.
The floor would be open for a
Yeah.
motion then.
Yeah, I make a motion, we table this proposal and wait for the census figures to come in so we know exactly what to do.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Is there any other discussion? Those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The July board meeting, we need to make a change.
Yes. All right. So just with schedules, our July meeting is scheduled for 6:00 p.m. A proposal to have it in the morning is to allow some of our staff that wouldn't be able to be there in the evening to help run the meetings and stuff. So I don't know if there's any objections to that.
I love it.
Is 9 o'clock a time that you'd want, or would you like it earlier or later? It's just a suggestion on the
so
proposal.
executive session would start at 8.
Or 8:30, depending on how much.
Or we could do executive session after the regular session.
Either way,
Yeah, I'm good with that.
with either
Let's-
way.
Let's do the executive session after. Is that okay with everybody?
You guys are the school board. You just,
Mhm.
The floor would be open for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the proposal to have a 9 o'clock meeting in July, on July 22nd. A board meeting
Follow with executive session.
with executive session following.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, on to informational items.
whew.
Cruising right along.
All right, so the first one, just an update on teacher negotiations. You know, as per our training in Rigby, the other day with ISBA, they mentioned that school districts and school board members don't have to be at the initial negotiations. So I just wanted to give an update. We decided to try that this year where I reach out to the Teachers Association after you guys have voted on opening up the negotiations. So we opened up 2 different negotiations. One was to complete the 2021 contract. Now, since we weren't changing the contract, the proposal that we made to the teachers was just that we would give the teachers, would pass on the money to the teachers that qualified for the money that was allotted through the career ladder. We were told last year that it was frozen, and then they said, just kidding, it's not. And we came back. So instead of opening up salary discussions on that, the association agreed for the district just to basically pay those teachers that would have received an increase. Those that were already paying above it didn't, and there was no complaints from the association
And
with that.
one lump sum.
They get to choose between 3 payments during the summer or 1 lump sum. That way we do not have to change the current contracts, and we just put them where they're at. And so that was for this year. So it looks like we're finished with this year's negotiations. Now we're talking about
Thank goodness.
next year's. And so we have put together a salary proposal for the teachers. They are looking at that. The guidelines with this, and this is something that I've heard that other districts were doing, and it allowed me to feel like, hey, good, we're on the right track. So we have in Idaho code the allocation model for salaries. And so we're trying to align it up where we pass that on to the teachers and then use our supplemental levy to attract and retain teachers equitably along the lines. And so we put together a proposal, and once it's approved from the association, we'll be able to come out and show that. But the feedback from the teachers on the salary schedule, they like that it's predictable. They also are very supportive that it allows them to be able to have an equitable pay where the new teachers and the receives extra money from our supplemental to attract them out. And then it increases little by little to help retain the experienced teachers. And so the only other thing with teacher negotiations right now are some suggested changes in the master agreement. And when those are finalized, I'll bring those back. Insurance is not changing because we changed in January. So we're locked in and we do not have any increases. So it makes it super easy this year.
Okay,
And so,
sounds good.
so just a positive, our Teachers Association is very grateful for our school board. They recognize that as a board and as a district, we really value our teachers. And so they're grateful for that. And we're fortunate to have such a great working relationship with our Teachers Association. You know, Mr. Hall is representing the teachers as president. Ms. Coleman is representing as a secretary, and they're amazing. So any other questions on negotiations? As soon as the association finalizes it, I'll bring it back, present it to the board to show that this is what we've agreed to, and the board can approve or change those negotiations.
Great. Okay, the August bond election.
All right, so we voted last month to focus on the remodels. Our timeline now is still by next board meeting is to finalize where we're going. I met with Mr. Soderquist to finalize some of these. I also met with Mr. Weeks and got the latest estimates from our financial advisor. And I came up with 3 different areas, 990, 1.2, and 1.5. I know that there's been some concerns with some saying, are we going to be able to have enough? We don't want to undercut. And we're looking at the difference between a 5-year and a 10-year. And so if we're looking at right now, any of the 5-year options with 1.5 still keeps us lower than the 10-year average of 350. The thing about all of these things that are on these projects is none of these things are going away, and we're always going to have facilities and upkeep. And so that's going to be the part where it just depends on where we're at as a community on moving forward. And so just going here, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's really close to where we're at. And the estimates, again, I put that in caps because these are estimate costs. I guess it depends on how much plywood is next week on these, which is one of the reasons why maybe asking for more allows us to take advantage of the things that we have. So the high school gym, AKA the old gym, you know, these were the different things we've talked about: painting it, redoing the floor, the roof, seating and bleachers need to be changed, putting tables in to create a commons area for the high school kids at lunch. Those are all the things that fall under the high school gym. About a 150 for all of the bleachers and all the different things that we have on there for updating that. As I talked with Mr. Soderquist, it really hasn't been touched really since I've been in school or before I was in school. And I'd like to think that I'm like, you know, but then he went back and said some of the things are the same since he was in school. I don't know, is he your age? We don't have to talk about age out here. I'm not looking at
Yeah, he
Metro.
was in our,
Yeah,
You know?
don't turn this way.
I'm making eye contact.
I wonder,
We have 3 West J graduates up here, come on.
Yeah, we do.
but I will say,
Others are from Jefferson.
I will say that the school is in better condition now than when we went. So
Well, that's promising in ways,
Mhm.
and we're moving in the right
It was
direction,
in great condition when I went.
but.
Less so when I was.
And so,
We left it great.
so this proposal would have the gym and the roof.
And
The next one on here, and just those at home, Mrs. Erickson walks in right as we're talking about the auditorium. I don't know. You might want to use that.
Gotta keep order in here.
And so,
I heard you guys chuckling.
so this amount right here with the 100,000, probably not so much for curtains, maybe for lighting and electricity, the power box. We don't know like how much it's going to cost. Like the power box that comes in is kind of a mystery. Mr. Soderquist would recommend that we really look out to an electrician to come in, and I'm not going to share completely everything in an open meeting, but what we've utilized that auditorium for so many years, and a lot of the things that came with it were used from the Jefferson School District
Right.
when it came.
Yeah.
And so when the auditorium was new in 71, 71,
60, let's see,
68,
58.
that
But the auditorium was built later though, then.
yeah, the auditorium
the
was added
school.
on later.
The auditorium was added on.
How much later?
I think it was,
I think early 70s.
I think it was 71,
Yeah.
72.
Yeah.
That's,
It was when Mr. Scholes was the high
And-
school principal.
and so the lighting that's in there, I
It's-
think
it's dated.
we've really got a good use out of that.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
aren't the curtains from Rigby too?
I think the curtains, the lighting,
Yeah.
sound system, maybe not. That was probably updated in the 80s,
Yeah.
as the tape decks. And
Still got 10 years.
doesn't have the 8-track players in there, Willie, but it does have the.
Yeah. We played music back in the day on 8 tracks.
But that's one of the things where sound system updates, projector, those are things we have been able to utilize a plant facility for some of the curtains right now. We're hoping to unveil them before the show for the main curtains. So a little teaser out there. We've already said that 2 of the shows are, and so
Really?
yeah, and so we're looking at ways. So this is where that estimate might be a little bit high, but I don't know. Once you start getting into electrical stuff, we don't want to shoot low, especially with this auditorium. The main gym, AKA the new gym, it needs a roof. The gym floor needs to be repaired. There's some painting throughout the building that needs to be updated, and just general repair in some of the locker rooms and the buildings. And so the roof would be 100,000. The floor is estimated to be 60,000. The general repair would probably fall under the general building repair for other places. And so that's kind of, there's a need all over. If we had these roofs replaced, we would be close to having all of our roofs up to date. And so there might be one more roof as I talk. Again, this is just an estimate. This is just a proposal. Before we vote, we'd want to really finalize it. So the general building repair would be classroom cabinets, flooring, exterior building repair. There's several buildings on the outside that need to be looked at. Parking lots, the event parking, which is back by the football field. We haven't completed that yet from 2006, 2007. This would be able to get us, that was the quote a few years ago, so that might be a little bit higher. Safety update. This is one, I'm glad Mr. Weeks stepped in, but I'll try to do my best, Mr. Weeks, to put that on here. And so the systems that we have right now with our camera systems are each independently operated, if you could say that. In other districts, they have systems that are connected through the internet and the web, where you're able to access for all buildings. So right now, if I needed to see something for the elementary junior high, I would have to be in the elementary junior high building. If I needed something at the new gym or the main gym, I would have to go over to that one. If I needed to the high school and so on, and even with this building. But we're looking at having an updated camera system where we are already laying the foundation with the fiber optic lines for the school. So as those fiber optic lines are going through, and this is the vision that Mr. Weeks has had with the E-rate, and we've had a great deal with the E-rate, we're getting the fiber optics in. that now we're in a place where we can start putting a system in that can be on the web and utilized for all systems. It's something that I could pull up my phone and I could access cameras anywhere we needed to on it. And so that's the update with the camera system. Along those lines, there's some other controlled door lock systems. We have a couple of those in place right now, but this would increase the capacity of being able to do that. The next step would be a PA system that's connected to the fiber optic. So a couple years ago, we did go in and connected the PA systems to allow us to have announcements throughout the campus. But the way that it was explained, and Mr. Weeks, you can interject, or if you could just tell me to keep going, I'll keep rolling on this. The way that it's explained is we had 3 or 4 different systems, and the money we used was to connect those old systems together just to have the announcements and PA systems out. But there are still limitations to that. One limitation is that we rely on our phone systems for some access. I don't have the ability to get on and do an intercom thing from one building to another. So if we had a lockdown at one building, we couldn't get it over to the other. And that's something that we can see with the recent thing from Rigby, how helpful it would be on a campus to be able to have a lockdown and communication go out everywhere. So the PA system connect that can go to the fiber optic would bring in new speakers into the classrooms that are connected to the internet and that. So then every single classroom that has that connected could actually get and receive a message at the same time.
Would that include the seminary building?
I don't know. I don't know if it would include the seminary building. That's something I haven't looked into. And that's a great question.
I think right now they can't hear the communications.
We might have to reach out to that group and see if they would be willing to match. I don't know. That's a great question. Mrs. DeGroff, you could make that note for us because that's something I haven't thought of. The next section would be the phone system. Our phone system is an analog system right now, and it was good in the early 2000s, but again, we'd want a phone system that's updated to that. And that's where the big price tag of $30,000 comes in, and that should cover everything for us to get going. And I asked Mr. Weeks with this quote, and it's not an exact quote, again, these are estimates, that this would also include the labor in the company that comes in and helps put it together. I know that's a concern. This is not a slam on Mr. Weeks. I've already said we've been doing a great job of getting the TVs out, but we're a small staff, and this would be a big project. And this would be at all buildings in the district.
Didn't they come through and put fiber optics in here?
They are doing it, but not everything's hooked up. Mr. Weeks, do you want to talk about where we're at with the fiber optics?
We put that proposal in it ended up being a 2-year proposal. We only had so much money left for our E-rate funds, so we put in enough to get us started on it, to kind of lay the main lines. And then we're waiting for this year's approval. We put in that proposal to finish it up. And once that comes through, then what our plan is, just go through, and then now we'll have fiber optics in every classroom. And then and all of these systems that we're talking about here and that's a lot of reason of going to the fiber optics, is to be able to handle all these systems and not down our bandwidth or any of our other functions, but to enhance that and keep it going.
But doesn't the phone company have some obligation to that?
Well, they just bring it to us.
That's it, okay.
And then we have to spread it throughout the district.
Okay.
So this new system is like a digital system updated from an analog.
Yeah, everything, like our current PA system, that's all on analog. The phone system we do have is some of that's IP, but is what it does. Or we're getting to we've had it in long enough that some of it, the longevity of it is it's met its life.
So will the analog system be completely done away with?
Yeah. we
Yeah,
just-
eventually, right?
Yeah, everything just goes to the network and IP. and that.
So I think this one on the bottom goes to the top,
The safety one? So make sure it gets it done.
number one priority.
It's not the end of the list. We have more, but
Wait a
But it
minute,
should
I
be
thought I was
towards
at
the
the end of
top.
the list here.
No,
Mine.
because I'm talking about all facilities. So I'll just, the next one is our track and field turf. The track does need to be painted, resealed, or resurfaced. There's different options with that. The field turf does have a life expectancy. I'm hoping to have the specialists come and look at the turf the first week of June, but again, that's pushing it a little bit close. I did find out that that we could redo the track and not the field turf at the same time. A company could come in a little bit later. I did get some early bids, and I thought I was gonna have to get the AED machine out when I first looked at it. But it's one of those things that, like, the top quality field turf was 533. The lower ones are probably gonna be around 300,000 for a replacement.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And so, but it's also something that we don't have a staff to maintain those things. And so there's a trade-off with it, and I know people will look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of money. Why are we doing that? But if you're sitting in my chair right now, it's there. We have it. And I guess if we really want to look and say, well, what would it cost to put grass in, because we'd never have to do it. We have to put water lines and then mow, and then like the water's not out there.
No.
And so these aren't finalized. I don't know if the company just wanted to give me a really high bid to like make everything lower than that look good. But there are other companies we can look at as well, because we need to be looking for the best option. But at the end of the day, the facility is there, and there's going to be a time where it's not safe for kids to
What's
play
the
on.
difference up here and down here?
So down here, the remodels and safety was 1.1. That's not including the track and the field
You're
turf.
recapping.
Yeah,
everything,
I'm just
I see.
recapping it.
Okay.
So the remodels and safety fall in about 1.1. The low end with the track and field is around 452 for an estimate. That if you add those two together, the 1.1 and the 400,000, that brings us to about 1.5. And so we could do all of that. Now, here comes the political side. You're going to hear people say, I'll vote for it if it doesn't have this. I'll vote for it if it doesn't have that. These facilities are not going away. We can't just somehow pretend that, oh, if I keep voting no on this, they're going to have to condemn the football field. Or they're going to have to, like, somehow it's going to reflect everything on what we do. And that's the part where, as a board, we're going to need to decide this is what we're doing, and this
Are
is
we
why.
up against it on this turf field now? Are we ready?
That's at the very least, let me go back down to this. Our track does need a retop. It's lost a lot of rubber. And that's a safety concern as well for the ones that are running. And when you think about it, if you look at this, most people look and say, oh yeah, let's do that track, but let's don't do that football field. You look at the track, there's more kids that play football over time in games where our community comes to watch the football games when we have 2 track meets a year. So when you're looking at the bang for the buck, you can go through all of this stuff and say, well, is it all worth it? You know, and it goes to our kids. It's one of the things that we do have a lot of pride in our community because of that field. And it is what it is.
Are we planning on going out to sell this, or are we planning on just doing it here in the meeting and hoping they come, or what are we? what's
Well,
that plan?
it's a remodel bond.
And so,
I don't know what else to do. I've had so many different meetings. We've talked to different people. They know that it's remodel.
Okay.
We'll probably have our 40 or 50 people watch this on YouTube, and then in August they're going to come and say nobody told me anything. You know, that's
what I'm afraid of. I don't think the people that watch our meetings, that vote, but that don't have kids.
And that's probably, that's
school.
probably the same with every single election that happens.
Right, but
you
haven't
know.
we gone out and talked about it before, or?
Yeah, and that's the thing is all of these are remodel issues. If we're looking at it, the field turf is a facility that needs to be kept up. That's all it is.
Right, I just wondered how you get people on board, that's all. You think they already are? You think they already know about it?
I can't, I would
sure
hope,
hope so, because you have a facility that has to be maintained
I
somehow.
know it, I
And if
know.
you don't, then the kids that are attending here now don't have the,
That's what I'm trying
facilities
to,
to enjoy
that's
while
what I'm
they're
trying to
here.
say, we've got to reach those people that never watch a meeting or never, but how do we do that? Word of mouth?
well, we will have to, when it's put out, it's, because I know if we, feedback from people, I've already had feedback on this. I have some people that say, I hate the track and turf idea.
Really?
I've had some people
What
say
do they
that.
want us to do with it?
I don't know. I don't know if they're mad that it got put in the first time. And they're gonna show us when, that might be what it is. I don't
Could
know.
be.
But it's here. So I would hope that those that could support this would.
Mhm.
That's the whole thing. That's all I can do as superintendent. These are the facts. These are the things that need to be updated and kept up. That's where we're at. If we don't pass the bond, these things can't be updated and they won't be. End of story. We could go back and whittle it down and say, well, we won't do that because everybody voted no because of that. But we need all of these things.
So when we were doing the levy, you sent out that brochure, just informational. Can we do that again? Just to get
Absolutely, we
awareness
would.
up?
We
Oh,
need
absolutely.
to.
We would be required to send this out.
when would the vote be?
It would be in August.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's on
August.
August bond election.
And that would allow us to be able to start these projects in the next fiscal year. If it doesn't pass in August, we wouldn't be able to get money for it until the next year.
So you just need to really advertise when the election is to
Yeah.
get people out to
Mhm.
vote,
Yeah.
and encourage people to vote.
And, as I've talked with those in when we were discussing the difference between new projects and remodel projects, I've heard people say, oh yeah, the remodels will pass every single time. And I would hope so. This is not something that we're trying
It's
to
not
be
extravagant.
extravagant.
It's just,
And part of it is we're anticipating the cost of things increasing.
Mhm.
And that's what happened when we started comparing it to the previous proposal of new projects. This probably would have been closer to 1.2 maybe beforehand,
Mhm.
but now it's closer to 1.5.
Yeah.
Well, when we say, on one hand, it's not extravagant, and at the same time, I feel like the board realizes this is a lot of taxpayer money, and we're not being frivolous with it. These are things that need to be done.
Yep. Most of these items are safety issues.
And if we look at the two different options of a 10-year and a 5-year, now that doesn't mean if we're on a bond that you can't re-bond later on if a need came up.
Mhm.
But a 10-year bond at 1.5, I don't want to say it's only a $51 impact, but we're still, again, the 10-year average is $350. None of these are even close to that.
and our bond won't expire before then, will it? Or did it?
It's
already
it's
did.
It's
expired.
ready. It's
Yeah.
done.
It expired
So-
the first year I got here.
So how do we decide for a 10 or a 5-year?
And so really it just comes down to what do we want to try to get it done in 5? The impact will be higher, which means
Mhm.
the impact would be $98, which brings you to $335 per. The other thing with the bond that we miss out on is we still have the bond equalization, where 20% of this is actually subsidized and taken away.
Mhm.
And so it's really still a good investment
Mhm.
with the bond.
Should we go with the 10-year, 15?
We could reach out to the others. It's
1.5 maybe?
TIC stand for.
Mr. Williams, with the bond equalization at the 1.5, it drops it down significantly.
Say that one more time, Mrs. Grant.
The dropping down is a significant amount.
Oh, from 5 years for the interest, so we pay less interest.
Well, we pay less interest, but also with the equalization.
Mhm.
So it's better to go with the 5-year.
Mhm.
I would think so.
I think so too.
Well, if we went with a 5-year, then in 3 years, we can look at
Another one.
new builds.
Yeah, well, 10 years is a long time that you might need more things done.
Yeah.
And you're locked into 10 years.
You know, because I might know more when the turf specialist comes and looks at it. Because maybe we would be able to do the track now, hold off, do the football field, and we get a little bit more use out of the field.
Mhm.
And that's the one thing, but they say it's 15 years generally. And the quotes that I have here, the quality of the turf is actually, it's advanced a lot in the last 15 years. And so this one that we have out here has a lot of the rubber turf in it, and it blows around in the wind. Imagine that it blows out
does.
here. Some of the newer turf doesn't get blown around as much, and it's higher quality. So I guess we get what we pay for on one hand, but it is a lot of money. Like, that's the thing is, I like Mrs. Chair, I totally agree. I don't want to make it look like, oh, we're here playing with everybody's money and we can just do whatever we want. But at the same time, these buildings are here for our kids and our community.
And they
And-
have to be
And
maintained.
everything that we have on this project will benefit our community and our kids. And there will be a lot of people very proud of things that are done on this list.
Mhm.
Is it a super majority? I hope so.
I do too.
I hope so
That
too.
that's the thing is, I hope it's a super majority that would be proud of this.
Well, do you need a decision on
No,
that top part?
nope, we don't need a decision on anything. This is just discussion. And that's, we can gather feedback right now. I'm leaning towards a 5-year. A couple of the things where the bonds fell off, where we were at 480 a couple of years ago. Like 5 years ago, it was
I know.
480. And we dropped all the way down to 230.
Yeah.
What was it, 223? Then we passed the supplemental levy, which puts us at 269. And then this would just be an increase from 269 up to these levels. So I think we're trying to find a balance between being reasonable, but I can't pretend that this doesn't exist just because it's a controversial topic for some people. And when I did that, you probably can't see that, Mrs. Erickson, at the track and field, I can't pretend like it doesn't exist just because it's controversial. It's here on our campus, our kids use it, and it's something that has to be looked at. And so I don't apologize for putting any of these things up here. These are the things that we need to do. And, I hope we get some feedback, and, maybe more than just the ones that usually call us and tell us I don't like that.
I do too.
Because it's hard to gauge.
When does this have to be decided on, the amounts and the timeline?
By June, we have to have the decision in on it.
We have to submit our proposal to the county by July, I think.
So like these, again, we've been talking about all these remodels. It just becomes more real when they get with a time commitment on that. So, thank you for that feedback.
Okay, super. Next is the science curriculum for 6th through 8th grade.
All right, I had a chance to hear from the science department, which includes Mrs. Barnett, Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Packer. And they, during one of the professional days, they met together to discuss how they could streamline instruction better from 6th grade to prepare kids for the high school classes. And so they put together some proposals, but this is the first time, and this is different than the math curriculum. The math curriculum is a renewal. It's something that we're already doing. This would be a proposal for a new one. And so I'm going to put together some samples of what they're looking at. In our next meeting, present that to the board. What they're looking at right now, there were a couple different ones, and these are the common ones. One's a Pearson product, one's a, I don't have it up here right now, but they would allow for curriculum to be taught in science from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And having a set curriculum, right now the curriculum, I believe, is probably 18 years old in those areas. Like some of those science books, they say things like, in the near future, DNA evidence may be used to help solve crimes.
Oh, dear.
So it's,
They were right.
well,
Something.
the cost for these, where's the timelines? The cost for this right now is looking to be about $17,000 for a 6-year commitment, which seems reasonable for that. I need to look into it a little bit more. With the budgeting concerns and things, we will have enough money with some of the ESSER money coming in and other budgets to allow us to be able to do this. We just want to make sure that it's the correct curriculum. I don't want to jump too soon on that. And so I don't know if there's any feedback that the board has for me as we look at a science curriculum.
To include curriculum or computers
And so if you're asking, so the ones that right now that they're looking at will have a computer-based element, they'll have a written-based element and a hands-on-based element. And so it hits all three. I was watching some of the modules on it, but again, I'd want the board to see that before we make a decision. So
I appreciate those 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers getting together and collaborating and say, what do you want? What do you want?
yeah, and that's one of the things that they thought was the strongest with the curriculum they were looking at, is that they were looking at the standards, basing it up and saying, okay, what builds on what? What builds on what? If we teach them right here, this will do. And not, one of the new things that the state does require ISAT testing on science standards now for, I believe, 8th grade. So this would allow the kids to be better prepared for that.
Such good news.
So I will get the details for that in our next one and present that, but all those elements with a computer-based, hands-on, and also a written format with it.
And what's the acronym for the math, science,
STEM.
STEM. Yeah,
Are they
science.
going to include STEM?
They STEAM. Yeah, they will have STEM.
STEAM. Oh, that's right. I don't want to forget.
I think all of the curriculums have that. They might even have on their lab manual have different STEM activities. I'm gonna have to double check on that one, but yeah, there's so that's where we're at moving forward with that.
Okay. Policy 4000 series.
All right, so we have a couple edits that came in after ISBA looked at that. We have them highlighted in here, that the edits that need to be added. In this 4000 series, the uniform grievance procedures. Scroll down. This one here is that the district has appointed a non-discrimination coordinators to assist in the handling of discrimination complaints. You can read through the rest of that. These are things that our administration is currently being trained in the Title IX requirements, and this is part of that procedure. And so our administrators would be appointed as the non-discrimination coordinators. This is just something that, with the new Title IX requirements, need to be added to it. I believe that's the only part of that one. And then the second part of this would be a first reading. Records available to the public. As we go through.
We omitted one word.
I was going to say there wasn't much.
We
on
omitted
it.
status. And so that's what we need to admit. So that's it. So that's first reading for that. Any questions or feedback or things you'd like to change for a second read? But I guess it's suggestions. We're not voting on it. So if you do have anything, when we put it on the agenda item for action items, we could go. Last
Good
part,
job, Carrie.
graduation requirements, just checking back in with our discussion with Mr. Guimar earlier. So just a discussion that we would like to put into the policy and process is that as we've been looking at mastery and standards, and being able to have clear expectations for students, that they would need to achieve a certain number of credits to be able to be promoted to the next grade. Now, in high school, this is what it would look like, because it's going to be different a little bit for junior high, but kind of similar. It's almost like they have little check things that we're looking at. So if I'm a freshman and I do not get all of my credits that I should earn, I shouldn't call myself a sophomore, even though I come back my sophomore year. So they might come back with their class, but on their transcript, we tell them, you are a freshman still. And I think that will drive a message home to them, because what I've seen a little bit, and I could be just interpreting, a kid misses a couple classes as a freshman, then they miss a couple as a sophomore, then they miss a couple as a junior, and then they go, oh my goodness, I have 5 classes that I have to pass before I graduate. But wait a minute, I'm a senior, I need my diploma. But if we are communicating with them as the counselor to say, welcome back to your second year, you're still a freshman. But if you take these remedial classes right now and you earn those credits, we change your status on that to be a sophomore. Any thoughts on that process? I don't know, pros and cons. Again, this is just a discussion point that Mr. Guimar.
So most kids are completing the 18.
I would say most of them are, but there's always a handful of kids that as a freshman flunked a class.
Okay, and how much can they lose in order to still be considered a sophomore?
They would have to have 14 credits to be a sophomore.
So they have to have, oh, I see that.
You see that? So 14 credits to be a sophomore, 30 credits to be a junior.
Or they can lose
And-
5 credits and not have it hurt them.
You could. And they do that partially because of release time for some of the students. That doesn't count as a class. And so
Okay.
you see what I'm saying? So they miss, students that choose release time would miss, they miss up to like 2 or 3 classes of credits.
Mhm.
And so those kids really could only miss 2. And so you can see that this really just has the expectations for them to say, this is what you have to do. And, maybe you keep them in the freshman hall until they get to sophomore. But
Yeah.
we don't want them to be punitive. None of this is wanting to be punitive,
Yeah.
but
But
the kids need to recognize that there's a consequence to actions, and the consequence doesn't have to be a punishment. But if I choose not to work, it's going to catch up to us, and this is hopefully going to say, I better step it up right now. So I can do that. So students who do not meet the minimum credit to advance will be retained at the appropriate level. These students will be considered part of that class and will be assigned lockers and class dues accordingly. Students who have retained may advance to the previous status upon completion. This will open up another door to, well, what if I'm a freshman and I'm completing classes like crazy? We have to allow this to open up the door to moving forward as well. And so that's going to be something that this discussion, I thought it was an interesting discussion with it.
So if you're supposed to be a sophomore, but you're still considered a freshman because you haven't completed these things and you're assigned a locker down the freshman hall.
I don't know if we have to do that part, but I can see some problems with it.
But you're paying those class dues accordingly. Now, partway through the year, are we gonna have to deal with, well, now you finally decided to get your act together and get caught up, and now we have to do all of these administrative things to get you where you should be now. You know what I mean? Your class dues, now you
Does it
paid,
change partway through the year?
you paid that freshman class due twice. Do you just pay the difference?
Pay the difference, or you transfer some of that out into the other and do it.
Right.
It's not hard to do that.
I
transfer
think
like that. I'm
I'm hoping that this doesn't have to be for a lot of kids.
Right, I just don't want it to be a headache. I like the idea behind it, I just,
That's a good suggestion.
as,
Well, it doesn't leave them on the last week of graduation
Mhm.
wondering, oh dear, what happened to me?
Mhm.
And then that way, it's sending a message to parents early, your son's a freshman again.
Mhm.
Like, and I've learned for those out there that might be listening, saying, we can't redshirt for athletics or anything like that. You just you can't play 8 years of high school football. Doesn't work that way. So another thing that was brought up just for graduation requirement discussion, junior high electives.
The ones with the checkbox are the ones we are offering
For junior high.
for junior high.
And Mrs. Grant, I believe you were able to help get some of this information. What was, did Mr. McGeemar just want this for a point of just information?
The board asked for information on the electives we offer junior high students.
extensive.
It's a lot of orchestra and
Band.
band.
So that's a class for each trimester.
B, B, and C.
Yeah.
Yes.
Art
What's
appreciation.
leadership specialist?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's coded that way. Do you know, Mrs. Erickson?
I imagine it's probably
It-
TAs and in the future, maybe student council.
Student council.
Mhm.
So something like leadership specialist would probably have prerequisites. Then,
Recommendation.
What are all these
Recommendations.
classes like social studies, they can all be electives?
I don't think these are all electives.
The elective-
No, they're all-
These
they're
are
core
these are all the
All
classes.
classes you're offering,
So
but
they're
the
not
ones
just
that-
No,
Okay.
these aren't just electives. These
Oh,
are,
I thought you said they were,
Mr. Guimard
electives
told
in
me it was
blue.
just electives, I'm sorry.
Self-defense, who's teaching self-defense?
is that in there?
Mr. Hall next year.
Just up at the top, Shane.
On the right?
It's one that he used to teach.
No, you went past it.
It
It
was
was
on
on
the
the right.
screen.
There it is.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Yeah.
Okay. And Project Create?
I have to look into that one.
and they've certainly got,
Doing his flight timing, yeah.
Yeah, that is one thing that we were trying to figure out a way to increase the electives for the junior high kids. Having Mr. H teach guitar, freed up time for Mrs. Parker to be able to take on other electives. The teachers collectively decided to allow for some bigger classes next year. This is one thing that was a teacher decision at the level. But what that does is allow all the junior high teachers to then have electives. So Mr. Hall can teach flight tying and self-defense. I believe there's probably a study skills class somewhere in there as well. I'm not sure if that has a different name to it. But that allows for a pretty good number. There's the study skills.
it's a lot.
And weights. Intro to drama. Were you teaching that this year, Mrs. Erickson?
But because of COVID, we didn't do a play, but next year I would do a play.
Like what time would that play take place?
So this last year we
Trimester.
did intro to drama in the fall, and now we've done high school theater in the spring, which has worked out really great.
Okay.
So this is just for 7th and 8th?
Or
Is
is
this-
6, 7, 8?
Is it 6th, 7th, and 8th?
We'd have to look at that and
Okay.
see.
I think it probably would just be 7 and 8.
I
It
think
just
so
used to be
too.
6, 7, and 8, so maybe that hasn't changed from last year.
We'll have to look at that. If it was the last period of the day, potentially that's when the 5th and 6th grade schedule could allow for some type of fine arts elective that time as well. So maybe that's gonna pretty good. Okay, so I'd like to thank Mr. Guimar for getting those. You know, as we looked at graduation requirements along the lines of again, we're having these discussions, so when we get into the summer, we can finalize next year's graduation requirements. And then be really clear with our students as they come back this is the plan, this is what we're doing. We're flushing COVID and the excuses of COVID down the drain and getting back to like setting the bar a little bit higher and saying, let's go for it. But with that, there needs to be a discussion in a future meeting with junior high credits as well. And so what do we do with junior high credits? If that right now there are some kids that are like, oh, I'll do it when I'm a freshman. I'm not going to do it now. And I think we could have the same discussion with junior high, that we say you're a 7th grader, and if you're not passing the classes, we'll put you in 7th grade again, but then you can finish it and jump up to 8th grade. And if you're not finishing everything in 8th grade, you can come during we'll have credit recovery options. We need kids to be able to say, all right, oh, my teacher's really serious about me doing this. Like right now, there's not the follow through. And here's the research shows that retention has a negative impact on kids, but that would be if retention is used as an intervention. If we're thinking, I need to retain this kid because they're just not getting, they're working really hard, they're not getting it. What we have to do is the kids that we're targeting are the kids who are doing nothing. That's what we're talking about with all of this. Because if there's kids that are working hard and they're trying to do their part, they will succeed with the standards-based approach because they'll be able to try it and try it again. But the part that we've seen with some students is the try part was taken out and the do nothing part is being exhibited. And that's the part where our teachers are going, these kids are just not doing anything at all. And I feel like I have nothing to hold over that. And they're not trying to be punitive, but we have to set that bar in that direction. And I guess that's the difference when some have heard me say, I don't support retention. I don't support retention as an intervention. I don't support and just say, hey, let's just hold you back and maybe you'll get it. I'll hold you back and maybe you'll get it. That's not what we're talking about. And so the kids that try will find a way to get there because our teachers will get them there if they're trying. So I don't know.
One thought is by doing it this way and starting it in 7th grade, the cost is much lower than if you get to your senior year and you're not graduating.
Yeah, for sure. Because, sometimes that happens. We've been fortunate the last couple of years and with some of the flexibility we have with COVID, we've had most kids, if not all kids, graduate. But we have to get back to the real world and we need to prepare people. Not that we're looking to try to fail people, but I don't know. I like the discussions we're having with graduation requirements. As now that we have the schedule that was voted on today with the blended days, is going to fine tune what we vote on because that takes away the need for the mentoring credit. Now it's just part of the class. So, all right. Any other questions from the board on either the first readings of the policy edits or the graduation requirements?
Legislative update.
I'll be quick on the legislative update. I really don't say this a lot, but I would like to thank the State Department. People, like really, they are doing the best they can to help us navigate the legislative session that hasn't ended officially. And so we were still getting updates on budgetary items for this year's budget that ends in June.
30th.
And so it's still there, but there are some new laws that have come in that are going to make us have to be cautious on our budgeting because there are some unknowns with the amount of different protections that were in place. And I don't know the reason why. I can't speak for the legislature on why some of these things came in, but basically the COVID money that comes in needs to be protected for backfill as much as possible and possibly for the next 2 or 3 years.
We will not have a final budget for the 2021-22 school year until July 15th, 2022.
And so
after we're into the next fiscal year.
yeah, so we're not going to really know next year. And so it's not the State Department that makes the decisions. They have to implement the rules. And and they were very professional. They weren't slamming anybody and throwing any political party or anything. But we have a political mess that school districts have to try to get through. And it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be clear. And the sad part about that is it makes us appear potentially incompetent. More so than, but potentially, how are you not doing this? You have news outlets that say you're swimming in federal money, which it's true, we have federal money coming in, but our hands are completely tied because other things were cut with discretionary. But then it goes right back to, we have so much more added on us because all the federal funds have their own reporting system in place. So really we've got cut back, we have money, but we have more and more and more reports to do.
And more restriction on how we can spend it.
And so it's like the analogy I gave, we're gonna have a plate of food and we should have a full plate to eat. But the way we eat it and how we do it, and once we eat it, we have to talk about it and then send a survey out to everybody about how we ate it and then make sure we send it to somebody else to make sure I digested correctly and then have a task force come in and make sure it was really digested. You know, it's one of those things that
Sounds fun.
That is the best analogy
I don't know,
I've heard.
it's one of those things that we're gonna have a full plate, but it's going to be complicated for our business manager, board clerk, as we go into the budgeting format, it will be tricky. And so
And in the bitter end, it smells like poop. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. That's all I have on the legislative update, but like I said, a lot of changes. It's complicated. We will be able to survive and go forward with it, but that's going to be the thing that at the end of the day, the goal is when the kids are in class and the teachers are in school, I don't want this frustration to pour over onto them. I want us to be in school. I want us to be going. I hope our community can recognize that this is not an easy thing. Whether you like public schools or you hate public schools, we're here and we're going to put together a product for the kids. And we're going to learn from mistakes and we're going to keep going with it. But it's one of those things that I don't want to ask for just leeway to begin, but it's going to be tricky to get through all of the different things.
We appreciate Mrs. Bingham and Mrs. DeGraw and them navigating this.
Yeah, they're
Good
different.
luck to 'em.
Like the three of us get together and we're like, all right, what do we do now? And like literally I'd get an email and they'd say, you need to spend this money before this time and you need to have a plan in by tomorrow. And so I go to Mrs. Bingham and I'm not exaggerating, that's a real life thing. And then they change it and say, just kidding, you can go down next week. But you still have to have it spent before the end of the month.
Hopefully we'll work our
And-
way out of getting rid of COVID.
I do too. It's a philosophical approach by some that are in the legislature,
Mhm.
that they see the money coming in, they wish it didn't exist, and so they're gonna punish the people that are receiving it to make a point that they didn't like the federal money.
Wow.
And so that's how it goes.
Well, just a couple quick date announcements.
Yep.
ISBA Annual Convention will be in Boise, November 17th through the 19th.
In person.
In person this year.
At this moment.
Right. Stay
Yeah,
tuned.
right.
Anything can change.
Yeah, that's sure.
The school board and student and staff barbecue will be Tuesday at 11. And graduation will be Wednesday.
Yep. And so, Madam Chair, once we have negotiations back from the association, we'll look to have a meeting to be able to have a special meeting to come in. The board can either accept or change any of that and we can go back to negotiate, but well, I don't have the exact date until I hear back from the association.
Sounds good. Well, the floor will be open for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Thank you.